Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon to our webinar, An Explanation to the Gruyter's Purchase to Open eBook Pilot Initiative in cooperation with Jisc. My name is Andrea Gregor-Adams, and I'm part of the institutional team here at Gruyter, and I'm very excited to host today's session, where we will explain our new eBook Pilot Initiative in greater detail and answer all your questions regarding participation in this crowdfunding eBook model. We allowed for up to 1 hour today, and our presentations will last about 25 minutes. So we have plenty of time for questions and to get all your answers you require from our team today. Before we get started, I have a couple of house rules. All your audio and video is muted today, but as said before, our chat box is there for all your questions, and we've given plenty of time. We would love to answer all of your questions today. So please feel free to write them in the chat box, and we will answer them for you. The session is recorded, and all the recording and the slide deck will be sent to you after this meeting, along with information on how you can contact us afterwards, should you want to speak to us after the event. Feel free to share the recording and talk to your colleagues about this initiative as well. And now I would like to introduce to you our three presenters today. We have with us Caroline Mackay. Caroline is a licensing manager at Jisc, currently focusing on open access monographs, which covers the negotiation of several innovative diamond open access agreements, and also seeking publisher compliance with the UKRI policy. We are delighted to have Caroline on board today, and she will be taking some time to explain to you why Jisc is supporting the Gruyter's Purchase to Open eBook model. Furthermore, we have Christina Lembrecht, Head of Open Access and Open Research at the Gruyter. Before she took on her current role, Christina also championed the development of the Gruyter's open access book portfolio in her various positions as acquisitions editor and project manager in the Humanities and Social Sciences departments. Christina will give us an insight into the Gruyter's OA monograph landscape. And last but not least, we have Anne O'Riordan, Head of Head of Sales for Europe, Middle East and Africa at Gruyter. Currently, our UK sales manager, Anita Joyce, is on leave until September. And in the meantime, Anne is also your main point of contact for all UK customers. Today, Anne will demonstrate how your institution can benefit from participating in the Purchase to Open eBook pilot. And with that, I am pleased to hand over to Caroline, who will start our presentations today. And keep your questions coming. We are waiting for your questions. Thank you very much, Caroline. It's over to you.
Thank you. So in August 2021, UKRI announced their new policy, which included for the first time a new requirement for monographs, book chapters and edited collections published from the 1st of January 2024 to be made open access within 12 months of publication. Large journal publishers are very familiar with open access policies and Plan S, although their book publishing departments are often completely separate. Smaller and specialist book publishers are also unfamiliar with open access monographs. Jisc's role on the monograph side to date has included socialising the UKRI policy and talking through the issues with publishers, with a view to them being ready to comply with the policy in 2024. Although the actual number of monographs funded annually by UKRI is relatively low when compared to the total number authored by UK affiliated authors, we have one eye on the 2027 ref, which will possibly include the requirement for all submitted monographs and chapters to be open access. This will be a game changer. Jisc is very keen to ensure that monograph authors continue to have the wide variety of venues to publish in and to support the publishers in their transition to open access. We are very aware of the current bibliodiversity within the monograph space, which we do not want to disrupt. We've been talking with publishers about alternatives to book processing charges and have been highlighting the diamond models via our open access community framework. The Diamond Open Access model produces immediate open access content, which is free to publish and free to read, and is supported by way of membership or contributions from supporting institutions. There are a growing number of such diamond agreements within the Jisc catalogue, such as Punctum Books, Open Book Publishing, the Central European University Press, and Liverpool University Press Opening the Future offers. Following an initial meeting with Gruyter, we were delighted to hear that they were developing their own pilot initiative for Diamond OA monographs for established book series with strong links to the UK by way of authors and editors. We're happy to license the agreement through our catalogue and hope that this initiative will be of interest to you to support. I'll pass over now to Christina.
Thank you, Caroline, for licensing the agreement on the Jisc catalogue. We really appreciate your support, and I'll move over to Christina now. Here we go.
Warm welcome also from my side. It's a pleasure to give you a short overview on the development of the Gruyter's Open Access program, and by doing so, explaining why we have been embarking into collaboratively funded models or diamond models for open access books. The first chart shows the development of the Gruyter's open access book portfolio. We published the first 2 open access books in 2010. That was just 2 years after introducing ebooks for all new publications. After selling and sending print copies to libraries and end customers around the globe for centuries, digital formats as a first step and open access publication as a second step have added new possibilities to fulfill our mandate to ensure the best dissemination and visibility for the research we publish. As you can see in the chart, in the first years up to 2015, OA books were in the clear minority compared to what we today often call the traditional publications.
Christina, can I just stop you 1 second?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Could I ask in the chat, please? There are a couple of people who have sound problems. Could I ask everyone, if you do have a sound problem, is it just for 2 people, or have we got a bigger problem here? Just write in, please, if you have a sound problem. Everyone can hear. Fine. Sorry to interrupt you, Christina. Thank you so much. It's just a one person. Thank you. Christina?
No problem.
Please. Thank you.
So back to the chart. So until 2015, OA books were in the clear minority. And we published only a handful of open access monographs and collected volumes. And this changed. Can you go back to the previous slide? Yeah, thank you. So this changed in 2015. As you can see here, we have then acquired constant and dynamic development, which is due to the increase of open access funding in Europe, particularly in the context of larger third-party funded research projects. Last year, in 2021, 200 of our new book releases were published immediately open access. And as you can see in the next slide, this corresponds to almost 15% of our total book output. The graph also shows that the proportion of open access publications varies greatly between subject areas. While we have a share of more than 25% of open access books in some of our humanities areas, the share is significantly lower in other fields, such as, for example, business economics, or also in our STM book portfolio. In the next slide, I would like to take a closer look on how our open access books are funded. Most of our open access books, almost 90%, are funded through publication fees, often referred to as book processing charges. BPC means that one party, generally the author or his or her institution, funds the open access publication. And I find it helpful to look at the BPC landscape in more detail, and suggest here to distinguish between 3 different funding sources to cover BPCs. You can see the distribution of these 3 funding sources in the chart. So in 2020 and 2021, more than 1/3 of our open access books were financed via regular budgets of the researcher or the research institution. Just over a quarter of our OA books were funded through research grants, such as, for example, projects funded by the European Research Council or the German Research Foundation, for which there's often a recommendation or even a mandate in place to publish open access. For another quarter of our books, funding applications have been submitted to open access book funds, which exist, for example, in Austria and Switzerland on a national level, or established locally at the level of individual universities, similar to the APC funds for open access journals. Also, BPC have enabled us to develop our open access book portfolio over the past years. The model raises some concerns. The funding structure makes it clear that access to open access book funding is still relatively exclusive. It is limited to scholars granted with major third-party funded research projects, to academics based at institutions that are well-financed or have a dedicated open access fund and policy in place to support open access monographs. Funding also clearly depends on the author's affiliation or nationality. Or to put it differently, the BPC model raises questions about equal access to publishing opportunities. Next slide, please. And these concerns are why we and others have started to explore new approaches as an alternative or a add-on to BPC models and to enable more authors to publish open access. And these models are often referred to, as said before, as non-BPC or diamond models. In one way or the other, they intend to translate one advantage of legacy publishing into the open access publishing ecosystem. Many institutions are paying a small amount to support open access publications. While we participated in the first rounds of Knowledge Unleashed, we started to work in 2019 on launching on our own collaboratively funded OA book projects in the German market, together with a German consortium. And over the 3 years, we have published more than 50 open access books via this channel. This year, with the support of 40 libraries from the German-speaking countries, we are able to open or flip 30 titles in German linguistics, literary studies, and history that have been originally planned as closed access titles. And after we have tested and successfully established our model in the German market, the next step for us is to pilot these models internationally. And I'm very excited about the Purchase to Open model in collaboration with Jisc. And with that, I'll hand over to Anne, who will now present the model in more detail.
Okay, Anne, over to you.
Great, thanks very much, Christina, thanks. I'm going to start with a few words about why we launched the pilot and what we hope to achieve. And I will then move on to explain the model in detail, including information about the content, the timeline, and the workflow. The next slide, please. So as Christina said, we're interested in developing sustainable non-BPC business models. And our goal is to make open access possible for authors with no access to funding. And with that in mind, we have launched a collaborative or crowdfunding initiative with Jisc. And the goal is to publish up to 30 frontlist titles, both monographs and collected works in immediate gold open access. In terms of content, we're focused on authors and series editors affiliated to UK academic institutions. And in terms of title selections, we're going to be looking at key series in our international English language program in business and economics, classical studies, and linguistics. And we want to use the experience that we gained from the German open access book transformation, as well as further develop workflows to support ongoing open access book transformation. Next slide. So in terms then of, why are we doing this? So Christina's already mentioned we have some experience of crowdfunding subject packages with our German language humanities program. We now want to develop expertise and experience of of open access book transformation in the UK and the rest of the world. Christina's also referred to the lack of funding for BPC models. And, based on our conversation with consortia, with institutions, we believe there is an interest in alternative models. And I think that the pilot will help us to gain some evidence in terms of the overall level of support we can achieve, what subject areas are of interest, and which countries will provide support. We also need to develop good workflows at Gruyter to ensure we provide the necessary support to pledging institutions. Now, I'm referring to back office workflows, providing metadata, discovery targets, and so on. And that's another reason why it makes sense for us to start with a small scale pilot. And there are lots of conversations going on within De Gruyter and with our partners about more ambitious transformation in the future. So we hope that the experience and evidence we gain from this pilot will help to progress to larger scale transformation in the future. So next slide, please. So what is the structure of the pilot? As I said, it's a crowdfunding open access book transformation. We're offering 3 subject packages in business and economics, classical studies, and linguistics. All titles are in English language. There will be 10 titles per package. The agreement is already published on Jisc collections and ordering is via Jisc. And just so that you're aware, we're also offering this to single institutions in other parts of the world, in the US and Europe and Asia. Next slide. So getting into a bit more detail about the model. As I said, 3 subject packages in business and economics, classical studies, and linguistics. We're looking at titles published between September 2022 and August 2023. And the title list will be available in September. So at the end of the pledging period, we will make the title selection. In terms of, so as I said, there are 3 collections, but it's possible to participate in 1 or 2. So it's not necessary you can pick and choose within the 3 collections. There is a tiered pricing structure based on Jisc bands, ranging between 800 and 1,500 euro per collection. And I have another slide later with a bit more detail on the pricing. And for De Gruyter, our funding target per collection of 10 titles is 70,000 euro. So that is basically at 7,000 euro per title to publish in immediate gold open access. Next slide. And some further details about how the model will work. So as I said, the funding target is 70,000 per collection. So if the target isn't met, the number of titles published in immediate gold open access will be reduced. So for example, if we achieve collection funding of 56,000, then we would be in a position to publish 8 titles in open access. If we achieve funding of less than 35,000 per collection, we will not proceed with the open access transformation. But however, important to point out that participating libraries will get perpetual access to all titles in the package, even if the funding target isn't met. And of course, it goes without saying the total funding per collection will depend on the number of institutions and also the tier, the size of pledging institutions. Next slide, please. So then moving on to talk about the content. I'm not going to spend much time on this, but I'm happy to forward more detailed information on request. So starting with the linguistics package, De Gruyter Mouton specializes in linguistics and publishes an internationally renowned range of books and reference works in linguistics. This package will include titles from well-established key series, including topics in English linguistics, dialects of English, and trends in applied linguistics. And we will be focusing on titles with UK author affiliation. Next slide. So the second package is business and economics and will include standalone titles as well as series titles in management studies. The series include De Gruyter studies in innovation and entrepreneurship and studies in corporate governance. Again, here we will be selecting titles by UK authors and series editors. And the next slide, it's the third subject package, classical studies. And this is a very strong publishing area for De Gruyter in both books and journals. All 10 titles from the package will be from our series cluster, Trends in Classics. And the series includes Scholarship in the Making and Pathways of Reception. So that's all I have to say on the content, but as I said, we can provide more details on request. Next slide, please. Just a bit more detail on pricing. I already explained that it's based on Jisc bands, so the price point for bands 1 to 5A institutions is €1,500 per collection. And for 5B to 8, it's €1,000. And then bands 9 and 10 pay €800 per collection. And the list price per title for the selection of titles we expect to include in these packages ranges from about €150 to €220. So therefore, the tiered pricing represents value, good value for all bands. Next slide, please, Andrea. Yeah, moving on to timeline. So we're now in the pledging period, and that will continue until the end of July. In September, we will confirm the list of titles. And then during the period September 22 to August 2023, up to, and I hope, 30 titles will be published in immediate gold open access in order of publication date. Next slide. This is just a reminder that you should have received an email from us, including a link to the De Gruyter, the cloud page with all of the details of the offer, as well as a link to the order form. And next slide. And now for just a bit more information about the workflow and what happens post or following an order. So firstly, here you can see I've given you the link to the cloud page and the offer on the Jisc catalog page. So we will be accepting orders up to the end of July, and on receipt of order, we'll be sending order confirmation messages and detailing next steps. Already said the invoicing is via Jisc. Then in September, we would send title lists to all participating institutions. And then as and when titles are published, we will be sending access confirmation messages together with MARC records. And then at the end, so this will happen on a title by title basis. And at the end of the period of publication, so by August 2023, when the collections are complete, we'll make discovery targets available. And final point is that just to say that we would be publishing the list of titles and the list of funding participating institutions on a dedicated landing page onto Gruyter.com. And that's my last slide, in fact. So yeah, I hope I've given you a clear understanding of the offer and the content and workflow. Happy to send more detail on request, but this is probably a good time to take questions if there are any.
Well, thank you very much, Anne. I haven't got any questions at the moment, so please do come forward and write some questions should you have some. While we're waiting, maybe Anne, you could be so kind and maybe answer one or two questions which we've had already in our recent seminars and conferences where we discussed this initiative with some colleagues and a lot of our customers and librarians. Is there one or two questions which came up a couple of times and you could answer it here while we're waiting for specific questions? For example, yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, sorry, no, go ahead.
For example, the question that if a customer already has an EBA collection with us, how will this initiative help our librarian?
Oh, okay, well, yeah, that's a good question, because we have many institutions in the UK are participating in EBA, and yes, potentially EBA institutions would eventually get access to these titles, but by participating in this pilot, you're supporting open access book transformation, and you're also freeing up your EBA credit spend for other titles.
Yes, thank you very much, Anne. That's a question that has come up quite a lot, and thank you for answering it. I have one or two questions here which I'll read out. Do I understand correctly that libraries need to pay for this OA model? Anne, would you like to answer this?
Yes, I mean, this is a library funded, this is a library funded model where, yes, libraries are paying a fee depending on the tier of their institution. So yeah, absolutely, it's library funded. I hope that we understand that question correctly.
Yes, I hope we do. Otherwise, please, Johannika, could you write the question again if Anne hasn't answered it for you? But I've put the price band in again for you to have a look at, the Jisc price banding here.
Can I just add something here
please,
as well
Caroline.
to this? The background behind a diamond model, which these are, is that libraries all chip in a small amount, and in all cases it would be cheaper than the institution paying a full book processing charge. So by collectively funding it, it's cheaper to all participants and will make the content available on an open access basis for the benefit of all.
Thank you, Caroline. I hope that answered the question, Johannika. There is another question, which is, will there be a minimum of published OA titles by August 2023? So I guess the question is, how many will there be a minimum of the published titles Diamond Open Access? Anne?
Well, we'll know by September 2022 the level of support. So we'll know at that point how many titles we're able to publish in immediate gold open access.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think the answer is that the pledging period will be until July, and then we will know what the publication of gold open access will be. Is that correct?
Yeah, so as I said, it's 7. We in order to publish the 10 titles per collection in immediate gold open access, we need to achieve €70,000 in pledges.
Yeah.
And if we achieve the 70,000, then with absolutely the 10 titles will be published in immediate gold open access. If we achieve less than that, so I use the example, if we achieve 56,000 titles, then at 7,000 per title, we would be able to publish 8 titles in immediate gold open access. So we'll know in September the number of institutions who are participating and the fees they're paying, and at that point we'll be able to announce the number of titles that will be published in immediate gold open access.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you very much, Anne. Thank you, and I've put the slide up here again to explain it. Yes, so I do not have any other questions, unless there's anything else coming up in the next couple of seconds. It looks like.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to Johannika asking about how is it open access to libraries? Well, I think Caroline hopefully addressed that, but just to say it's open access for the benefit of all. So some libraries, a group of libraries will pay a fee, but for the benefit of it, those titles will be published in open access. I hope that answers that question for you, Johannika.
Yes, I hope so too. And Johannika hasn't written again, so I'm hoping that this answered her question. Thank you. Yes, she said thank you, so I think you made it clear. All right, thank you.
Okay,
right.
Good.
Well, I think you've been very clear, so I guess that's why there aren't any questions. At least that's what I'm hoping. And I hope that many of you who are here today at the call will find this initiative of interest to you to support. And as I said, if you have any more questions, please feel free to contact us. I will send the slide deck around and the recording, and also all the information on how you can contact us. So for now, I would love to thank Caroline, Christine, and Anne for taking your time to share your insights into the Gruyter purchase to open eBook pilot and your thoughts. And I'll thank all of the people who've joined us today for taking their time out of your busy schedule. And I hope that it gave you a couple of answers and you will find this of interest. So have a great day. Stay safe, enjoy your summer. And I hope that we will see you again in one of our future events. Thank you, and bye-bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.